On a warm evening in Columbia, South Carolina, a 14-year-old boy ran for his life down a busy road. Behind him was an armed convenience store owner. Seconds later, gunshots echoed through the street. The teenager collapsed onto the pavement with a bullet wound in his back. At first, people believed it was another tragic case of a store owner shooting an unarmed black teenager over a minor accusation. But then investigators discovered something that changed the entire case. The teenager had a gun. And suddenly, the story became far more complicated. What really happened that night outside a small gas station would divide an entire community, spark protests across South Carolina, and eventually lead to one of the most controversial courtroom verdicts in recent years. This is the case of 14-year-old Cyrus Carmack Belton and store owner Rick Chow. A case that left one teenager dead and a nation arguing over self-defense, fear, race, and justice. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications because we cover some of the most shocking and controversial true crime cases from around the world. Now let's begin. The story starts in Columbia, South Carolina. Located in Richland County, Columbia is known for its universities, neighborhoods, and growing businesses. Like many American cities, it also struggles with crime, poverty, and tensions between communities and law enforcement. One of the businesses in the area was the Express Mart Shell gas station located on Park Lane Road. The store was owned by a man named Chike Rick Chow. Most people simply called him Rick Chow. Chow was 61 years old at the time of the shooting. He was known as a hard-working businessman who spent years operating the convenience store alongside his family. But according to investigators and later court testimony, this was not the first time Chow had aggressively confronted suspected shoplifters. That detail would later become extremely important. On the evening of May 28, 2023, 14-year-old Cyrus Carmack Belton arrived at the store with friends. Cyrus was just a teenager. Friends and family described him as energetic, funny, and full of life. He loved sports and music and had dreams for the future. But that night, everything changed in just a few minutes. Surveillance footage later showed Cyrus entering the convenience store while wearing a red hoodie and carrying a backpack. The store reportedly had a policy asking customers to leave backpacks near the entrance. According to prosecutors, Cyrus picked up several bottles of water inside the store but eventually put them back. Police later determined that nothing had actually been stolen. But at the time, the Chow family believed otherwise, and that misunderstanding would quickly spiral out of control. As Cyrus left the store, tensions suddenly rose. Rick Chow, his son Andy Chow, and at one point Rick's wife, began following the teenager outside. Exactly what happened next would become the center of a massive legal battle. According to prosecutors, the Chows aggressively chased Cyrus after falsely accusing him of stealing. According to the defense, the family believed they were dealing with a possible thief who might also be dangerous. Witnesses later said the chase moved far beyond the store property and stretched more than 130 yards down the road. That is longer than an entire football field. At some point during the chase, Cyrus lost one of his shoes. His phones reportedly fell onto the pavement. Witnesses described seeing panic and confusion. Then came the moment that would determine the entire future of the case. Cyrus was carrying a gun. Investigators later recovered a 9mm semi-automatic pistol connected to the teenager. But what nobody could fully agree on was this. Did Cyrus actually point the weapon at Andy Chow during the chase? Or was he simply trying to run away? The answer to that question became the difference between murder and self-defense. According to the defense team, Cyrus fell during the chase and then pulled out the gun, aiming it toward Andy Chow. Defense attorney Jack Swerling argued that Rick Chow believed his son's life was in immediate danger. In court, the defense described it as a split-second decision made by a father trying to protect his child. But prosecutors told a completely different story. They argued that Cyrus never pointed the gun at anyone. Multiple witnesses testified they did not see the teenager brandish a weapon during the chase. Some said the gun had already fallen onto the ground before the shooting happened. Then prosecutors revealed another major detail. Cyrus had been shot in the lower right side of his back. That fact immediately became one of the most controversial pieces of evidence in the entire trial. To prosecutors and many members of the public, it suggested the teenager was running away when he was shot. The shooting happened quickly. Gunfire erupted on Park Lane Road. People nearby heard the shots and froze in shock. Moments later, 14-year-old Cyrus Carmack Belton collapsed onto the street. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, but the teenager later died from his injuries. The case exploded across social media almost immediately. News headlines spread rapidly throughout South Carolina and then across the entire country. Many people were horrified by the idea that a teenager had been killed over what appeared to be a misunderstanding involving water bottles. Protests soon erupted outside the Express Mart Shell station. Community members gathered holding signs and candles. Some demanded murder charges. Others called the shooting another example of armed civilians using deadly force too quickly against black teenagers. Flowers and memorials covered parts of the sidewalk near the gas station. At one vigil, mourners arranged water bottles together to spell the name. The image became symbolic of the entire case. As pressure grew, investigators launched a detailed examination of what happened. Police reviewed surveillance footage. Witnesses were interviewed repeatedly. Forensic experts analyzed the bullet trajectory and physical evidence from the scene. Eventually, Rick Chow was arrested and charged with murder. The charge shocked many people in the community because South Carolina has strong self-defense protections. But prosecutors believed they had enough evidence to prove that Chow acted with malice rather than fear. The case quickly became one of the most watched criminal trials in South Carolina. And long before the trial even began, there were signs that the legal fight would become extremely complicated. One of the biggest developments happened during a pre-trial immunity hearing. Rick Chow's legal team attempted to have the charges dismissed under South Carolina self-defense laws. Essentially, the defense argued that Chow should never even face trial because he was legally justified in protecting his son. But the judge denied the request. The ruling was significant. The judge determined there were too many conflicts in the testimony to grant immunity. That meant a jury would have to decide what truly happened. And that decision would eventually divide the public even more. As the trial began in Columbia in 2026, emotions inside the courtroom were intense. Cyrus' family sat listening to every detail about the final moments of the teenager's life. Meanwhile, Rick Chow and his supporters prepared to defend his actions as self-defense. The prosecution painted a picture of recklessness and anger. They argued that Rick Chow became enraged after believing Cyrus stole water bottles. Prosecutors repeatedly reminded jurors that no theft had actually occurred. They argued the chase itself escalated the danger. According to the state, the Chows became the aggressors the moment they pursued the teenager down the road while armed. Witnesses described seeing Cyrus run. Some testified they never saw him threaten anyone. The prosecution emphasized again and again that Cyrus was shot in the back. To them, that physical evidence told the real story. A frightened teenager trying to escape. Then the defense stood up and presented a very different version of events. Defense attorney Jack Swerling focused almost entirely on fear. The defense argued that this was not about stolen water bottles anymore. The moment Cyrus allegedly pulled the gun, everything changed. According to the defense, Rick Chow believed his son was about to be killed. They argued that no father would stand there and do nothing if he thought his child was facing a gun. The defense also reminded jurors that Cyrus was armed with a loaded semi-automatic pistol. That fact alone became incredibly important, because even if jurors questioned parts of Chow's story, they still had to consider whether he reasonably feared for his son's life. And in criminal court, prosecutors must eliminate reasonable doubt. That is a very high burden. Over several days, the courtroom heard emotional testimony, witness statements, and forensic analysis. But despite all the evidence, one major problem remained. There was no perfect witness. Some witnesses gave conflicting accounts. Others admitted they did not clearly see the critical moment before the shooting. Only the Chow family consistently claimed that Cyrus pointed the gun. The uncertainty created a legal gray area. Then came jury deliberations. The jury spent around 8 hours reviewing the evidence and testimony. Outside the courthouse, tensions were already building. Many people feared the verdict would spark outrage no matter what happened. Finally, on June 1, 2026, the jury returned its decision. Not guilty. Rick Chow was acquitted of murder. The courtroom reaction was immediate and emotional. Members of Cyrus Carmack Belton's family cried openly. Supporters expressed shock and anger. Outside the courthouse and near the gas station, protesters gathered once again. Many people said the verdict felt deeply unfair. Cyrus' family later released a heartbreaking statement saying, "We do not accept it. Cyrus stole nothing. He was a child, and he was running for his life." For the family, the acquittal felt like another devastating loss. But supporters of Rick Chow saw the verdict differently. To them, the jury recognized the difficult reality of a fast-moving and dangerous situation involving an armed teenager. The case immediately reignited national debates about self-defense laws in America. People argued online, on television, and throughout communities. Some believed the verdict proved the justice system failed another black teenager. Others argued that the presence of the gun completely changed the situation and made the shooting legally justified. Even after the criminal trial ended, the legal battle was not completely over. Attorneys representing Cyrus' family announced plans to continue pursuing a civil lawsuit against Rick Chow. Unlike criminal court, civil court has a lower burden of proof. That means the case could continue for years. As more details emerged, investigators and journalists also looked deeper into Rick Chow's past. Reports revealed that he had previously fired at suspected shoplifters in earlier incidents before Cyrus was killed. Critics argued this suggested a dangerous pattern of behavior. Supporters argued he was simply protecting his business in a high-crime area. That disagreement became another major point of controversy. In the end, this case became far bigger than one shooting outside a gas station. It became a national argument over fear, race, guns, self-defense, and how quickly situations can spiral into deadly violence. Some people see Rick Chow as a father who believed his son was in danger. Others see him as a man who chased and killed a teenager over a false accusation. And somewhere between those two narratives lies a case that still leaves many unanswered questions. Could this tragedy have been avoided if nobody had started chasing Cyrus? Did fear cause Rick Chow to panic? Or did anger and suspicion push the situation too far? Why did a 14-year-old have a loaded gun in the first place? And if Cyrus had never been armed, would the verdict have been completely different? Those questions continue to divide people to this day. One thing, however, is certain. A 14-year-old boy lost his life on a South Carolina street. And for his family, no courtroom verdict can ever erase that pain. As for Rick Chow, although he walked free from criminal court, public opinion about the shooting remains deeply divided. And years later, the case still sparks heated debate across America. Thanks for watching today's episode. This case remains one of the most controversial self-defense trials in recent years, and we want to hear your thoughts. Do you believe the jury made the right decision? Or do you think justice was never truly served for Cyrus Carmack Belton? Leave your opinion in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this true crime documentary, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another case.